This audio presentation of Hi Dad is brought to you by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction. Written by Herbert Ewing Duncan. Executive producers: Scottish Rite Grand Commander James D. Cole, 33rd degree. Grand Master of DeMolay John Sellars, and DeMolay Grand Secretary Stephen E. Crane. Narrated and produced by Matt Bowers, 32nd degree. Consulting producer Dean Alban, 33rd degree. Hi Dad Book, copyright 1981. Audio recordings copyright 2023. All rights reserved. For information on how you can donate to support this audio serial, visit DeMolay.org. Chapter 16. Through the Years. A half-century, and more, has passed since Frank Land and 9 boys met together and from their informal meeting gave the Order of DeMolay to generations of young men. The vivid personalities of countless men and boys surrounded the life of Dad Land. Only a few of these have been included in this narrative. There are so many who should have been included, for so many gave so much to make it all possible. The story of only a very few of them in the march through the years is here given with appreciation for the role each has taken in the story. The original 9. Ivan Bentley. His accidental death in 1921 made him the first to have a pearl changed to a red ruby in the DeMolay emblem. Elmer Dorsey. Recently retired from an active business career, he lives in Dallas, Texas. Jerome Jacobson. Graduated from the University of Kansas and was admitted to the Missouri Bar. He has had an outstanding career in law and finance and is now a representative of West America Securities. He lives in Kansas City, Missouri. Louis Lower, the first DeMolay, was killed on July 18, 1943. His memory is held in the second ruby. Edmund Marshall is represented by the 4th ruby of the emblem, Dad Land being the 3rd. A graduate of the University of Missouri, Marshall was active in the grain and commission business, serving as president of the Kansas City Board of Trade. He died November 8, 1966, in Kirbyville, Missouri. Gorman McBride. A lawyer by profession, he has been a member of the headquarters staff of DeMolay since October 1953. He travels the nation, speaking to DeMolay conclaves, telling of the early days of the order, and sharing his deep devotion and dedication. He is the only one of the original 9 to receive the Founder's Cross. Ralph Sewell is now retired after years with the H.D. Lee Mercantile Company as credit manager. A skilled pianist and organist, he makes his home in Kansas City, Missouri. William Steinhilber, retired from a successful career in stocks and bonds. He lives in San Diego, California, and is proud to have been the captain of the first baseball team in DeMolay. Clyde Stream, retired in 1967 following a career as a technical engineer for the Saginaw Electric Company. He now resides in Bradenton, Florida. The Land family. Mrs. Nell Land lived only a few months after the death of her husband. Mrs. Elizabeth James, the mother, died May 23, 1966 at the age of 93. She was a lady of courage and determination, proud of her pioneer ancestry, her son, and her family. Much of the tenderness of motherhood in the DeMolay ritual is a reflection of the love and care she gave to her children. Mrs. C.P. Stein, the sister, now lives in Blue Island, Illinois, a suburb city of Chicago. Her husband was an executive of the Elgin Joliet and Eastern Railroad until his death a quarter of a century ago. Etta Glenn is busy in club groups and the Eastern Star activities. She makes frequent trips to Kansas City to visit friends of the Land family and to continue her interest in DeMolay. Mrs. Irene Palmer, the half-sister, is married to Robert E. Palmer, an electrical contractor, and lives in Raytown, Missouri. She has 2 daughters, Mrs. June Irene O'Neill and Mrs. Marjorie Swain, and a son, Robert James, who is a member of Raytown chapter of DeMolay and a student at Lindenwood College in St. Charles, Missouri. Irene is active in many fields including art classes which she teaches. her own painting, and is so devoted to her garden that she founded the Town and Country Garden Club. A few of the others through the years. Sumner Blossom, an active member of the Supreme Council and an intimate friend of Dad Land since 1912. He has now retired from his office as honorary chairman of the board of the Crowell Collier and Macmillan Company of New York. His journalistic career included work in Topeka, Kansas, in charge of the Associated Press office there, as a war correspondent, work on the New York Daily News, and more than a quarter of a century with the Crowell Collier and Macmillan Company. A dinner was given for him on the 25th anniversary of his work with this company, and Frank Land was with him during this time of recognition. Charles A. Boyce, selected to the office of Secretary General following the death of Dad Land, he served in that office until the Supreme Council meeting of April 10th through the 11th, 1960 in Tucson, Arizona, where Clarence Head was elected as Secretary General. During the following year, he was invaluable in the reorganization of DeMolay, giving of his vast knowledge of the order and 37 years of dedicated, loyal service. In appreciation of his work, the Supreme Council retired him from active endeavor in March 1961 with a lifelong pension. It was an active retirement, for he maintained his office at DeMolay headquarters, being among the first to arrive each morning and the last to leave in the afternoon. He was a symbol of the past, giving vitality to the present. During his last years, he wrote a history of DeMolay and of Frank Land, which he called The Biography of Frank Sherman Land and the History of the Order of DeMolay. Copies are in the DeMolay Library and are of great value for their extreme accuracy and detail. He quietly passed away on July 27, 1968, at the age of 81. His wife, Gertrude, carries on his deep love of the order he gave so much of his life to nurture. Roy E. Dickerson served for 15 years as Director of Activities for DeMolay, and on October 1, 1941, became the Executive Secretary of the Cincinnati Social Hygiene Society. He won national recognition as a writer, speaker, and consultant among young people, with special attention to mental hygiene, education for marriage, the psychology of personality, and the needs of youth. Among his books are Growing into Manhood, How Character Develops, and Understanding Myself. His interests at home and abroad were so varied that he never retired. He was killed in an air crash on November 8, 1965, while returning from a visit with his son, Roy H. Dickerson, Senior Vice President of the First National City Bank of New York.